You're listening to the Songs of Inspiration podcast, bringing you local interviews and performances by singer-songwriters with the goal to give space to the music community and share local artists' messages and stories with the world. I'm your host, Lars Wickland. Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the Songs of Inspiration podcast. I'm really happy to have Erin Sullivan here with me. Thanks for being on the podcast, Erin.
Thanks so much for having me.
So to kick things off, can you tell us how you got started with music?
I have been active as a musician my whole life. I played piano as a kid and studied voice with my grandmother, who was also a musician and a singer. And then in my 20s was doing a ton of music, playing in a duo with someone else in New York City, and then stepped away from the music for a long time, and then went back to it about 4 years ago and have jumped in, and that's really sort of been the version of me as a musician now that I'm really focused on.
What artists have influenced you as you kind of started out musically?
So for sure, Joni Mitchell is in my top 5, as it is, I think, for many songwriters. I remember listening to the album Blue for the first time and just being kind of blown away at just how smart her lyrics were. And from there, it's kind of moved on to folks like Patty Griffin and Ellis Paul and Vance Gilbert and Laurie McKenna, folks who really know how to use the songwriting form to tell a good story and just kind of grab you by the heart at the very beginning of the story and just kind of suck you in.
Very cool. What do you think are kind of some of the essential elements that make up a good song?
I think it's that. I think for me, for sure, it's storytelling, and the songs that I remember the most are the ones where you can really got the arc of the characters and you feel like the stakes are high and you really care about what that character is going through. So there's that. But then, of course, you need the hooky melody or chorus that really drags you in and makes you want to sing along. And I feel like a smart turn of phrase and unusual use of language is always something for me personally that really captures my attention. Did you have any mentors as you got started with music? Yeah, I did. I would say that sort of in this phase of my music career, when I jumped back in a few years ago, I went to a songwriting retreat that was run by Ellis Paul.
Oh, cool.
And that was a real game changer for me. I really loved the opportunity to participate in the songwriting classes that were there. So there was a class taught by Katie Curtis. Steve Pultz was another one. And Buddy Mondloff. So amazing songwriters. And so we spent the weekend in those workshops and then also just meeting with all these other songwriters and sharing our experiences and sharing our songs in process and our songs that were finished. And so I felt like Ellis really set the bar in terms of how he needed to think about songwriting. And so he's been a great mentor for me. And then another one has been Vance Gilbert. And I've been working with him over the past couple of years, kind of working on individual songs, and I'll bring him lyrics and kind of tear apart the song together and figure out what's working and what's not working. And the great thing about Vance is that he pulls no punches. Yeah. So I get really straight feedback, and he's definitely not the kind of person to say, oh, that great song, and without any specifics. So if something's not working, he will let me know. And then of course the issue is to be willing to kill your darlings, right? And go in and even when you start writing a song and you get lyrics down, you're like, oh, that's so awesome, it's so smart, and you're like, actually no. So you gotta pull it apart and start from scratch.
Yeah. It's cool you get that input though, and it is hard to, when you're pulling stuff apart like that, to kind of take it apart, put it back together and stuff.
Well, yeah, and you're so emotionally invested in it, and also again, a good song, I believe, comes from a personal place where you've got some emotional connection to it. So if someone's coming to you and saying, I am honoring the experience that the song came from, but the song itself needs work, you have to work really hard to separate those two things and realize that the person's not attacking the experience. They're just saying, the song isn't doing its job.
Do you have any creative routines that you use to keep inspiration flowing?
So I have 2 answers to that question. One is, in general, for me, I need to be moving when I write. And so I would say that probably 90% of the songs that I've written have happened when I've been on a walk.
Oh, wow.
And there's something about being outside, being away from all the things that can distract me inside my house, being away from all the humans that can distract me. And also, I think just the rhythm of walking and being out in nature, I call it just sort of free range thinking, where you kind of just let your mind, I may not necessarily be saying I've got to write a song by the time I get to the end of this walk, but you are letting your brain go where it will. And I often find that, particularly in the morning when I'm rested, those are the times where like a melody will swing into my head, or a phrase or an idea, and then I can kind of work at that. And again, I'll go on another walk and try to work it out. But that for me is the single best way to get work done as a songwriter.
Very cool. And do you start with the melody usually, or just lyrics? Or?
That's such a good question. I would say that it's both. That it's a set of words that comes with a melody attached, and I typically write together that way. And it's only been recently where I've started writing some lyrics without the melody, and that's actually, I find that weirdly difficult.
It is, yeah. I've tried to do that too, and it's
yeah, and it
really
feels
hard.
like you're pasting a sound on top of words, and so for me it makes much more sense to kind of have them evolve hand in hand.
Can you share a story behind one of your songs that you've written?
Sure. So one of the songs on my first album is called Train from Gary. And that was inspired by my grandmother, who I mentioned before, who is also a musician and a singer. And when she was a young woman, she left the Midwest and wanted to pursue her dreams of stardom in New York City. And so she lived in New York City, and she sang in USO clubs during the war, and she auditioned for Broadway shows, and she was cast in the original Broadway production of Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
Which is super cool. But she left before the show opened to marry my grandfather. And so by the time I knew her, she was just my grandma, right? And also a musician. But of course, when you're a grandchild, you never think to ask your grandparent any of those questions about what it was like when they were a young person.
Yeah.
And so after she passed, I realized, and especially once I really got into my own music, I started really wondering, like, what would it have been like to be standing on a stage, having Rodgers and Hammerstein listen to your audition and direct, right? It's just crazy, right?
That is crazy.
And so, but I never got to ask her those questions. So this song, Train from Gary, is structured. Every lyric in the song is a question, and it's all the questions I would have asked her if I could have.
That's so cool. I love the premise of that, and it's very cool that a story behind that. And that's cool that your grandmother was almost in Oklahoma.
She was almost in it. And she always really was an inspiration, because even as she was an older woman, she always found ways to weave music into her life and was always a performer. But again, like I said, now I would just love to sit down with her and just pick her brain about all that.
Getting those experiences and hearing those stories would be really cool, but it's cool that you kind of honored that with that song.
Yeah, and what's so great, one of the things I love about performing that song is inevitably someone will come up to me after the show. It's usually an older person, and they'll say, your song reminded me of my grandmother, and how she was a fill in the blank, and I never got to ask her about that. So I feel like it's a common experience to a lot of people, that when you reach different phases in your life, you realize that the grown-ups in your life also had those experiences, and you just wish that you'd taken advantage of that wisdom.
What was the biggest challenge you faced pursuing music as a path?
That's a great question. I would say that a lot of it is time, because it is a time-consuming project, because it's not just the songwriting. It's making time for the songwriting and working on this craft of songs, but it's also making time for the production and the recording, and it's making sure that you have the funding to make the production and the recording, and then it's trying to book the shows, and it's trying to market yourself. And I think being an independent musician these days, you have to be willing to keep all the plates spinning at the same time, and it's a lot to keep track of. And I've got this album coming out in 2 weeks, and I've been sort of hyper aware of that I have my like little checklist for each day, and I tell myself that every day I have to like do something related to my music project, but 90% of the time these days it has nothing to do with me actually picking up a guitar and singing, and it has much more to do with all of the other components. And you're lucky if those are things that you happen to enjoy, and I do happen to enjoy them, but I have a lot of music friends who like just hate that part of it, and literally all they want to do is be singing and performing. And so making sure you've got the social media posts and making sure you're getting in touch with the booking agents or whatever, it just is
there's so
brutal.
much to it. And the recording process, then marketing it, and it's a lot for sure. Tell us a little more about the EP. I think you played a show last night.
I did. So I had my album release show at Club Passim last night. It was a sold-out show. My good friends, the Lied Twos, which is Susan Levine and Doug Kortler, opened the show. They did the first set, and then I did the second set. And it was kind of a bucket list, dream come true show, because it's this, completely historic folk venue and a beautiful place to perform, and all these people who I love showing up to show their support for both the Lied Twos and for me. And I got to play with a full band, which I usually don't do when I perform, because I usually just perform solos. So we had a stand-up bass and an amazing fiddler and a drummer and guitars and dobro and the whole situation.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was really, really fun.
That's a full sound too.
The album was produced by Doug Kortler, and it's 11 tracks on the album, and it really is a very full sound. And each track, it sort of has a similar tone to it, obviously, but each track has something a little bit different about each one that kind of makes it stand out, makes it special. So there's one that's like there's a saxophone in it, which is weird, and another one we've got like a kid's piano in the background. And so there are different instruments that we bring in to kind of highlight what the mood of the song is.
That's cool. That's cool that you have those different textures. I always find that interesting in the recording process, the things that are kind of built into the background that add that extra element to a song. Yeah,
and when you think about songwriting too, I feel like I'm realizing through this process how important a great producer is in that process, because I wrote the music and the lyrics, and I sing them, and I have ideas about what I want the sound to be. But when it comes down to making that real, that's the producer. And so you have to have a creative mind that's willing to experiment with different sounds and layer sounds and try new things and think outside the box. And so I think that partnership when you're working on a recording project is really critical.
Absolutely. Yeah, trying to fill out, like starting kind of with the sketch of the song and trying to fill it all out. It's a really cool experience, and it's really cool to work with people in that way too.
Well, I think of it, it's like going into a hair salon and trying to describe to somebody how you want your haircut to look, because there are no words. You can like show somebody a picture, but everybody interprets, I want it short and layered in a different way, right? And so the same thing with a song. And so, one of the starting points for our conversations for the album would be for me to bring reference tracks and say, I love this Tom Rush song, or I love this song by the Accidentals. And then, Doug listening to it and saying, well, I think, is the thing that you love the strings, or is it the reverb on the voice or whatever? And so having to like find the language to talk about that stuff.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to songwriters just starting out?
I would say find your people. I think that's the most important thing. And so you were talking about kind of the open mic scene in Massachusetts, and I cannot recommend the open mic scene highly enough. That's where you find other folks who are willing to put themselves out there creatively. It's a great opportunity to try out new material. And that's how I've made all my music friends and my collaborators and found the people to play at my shows. Is you just have to keep bumping up against the world and finding who your like-minded folks are.
Absolutely, yeah. I think from doing this podcast, I feel like that's been connected in a lot of ways. Like I've talked to a lot of people who started out doing the open mic scene and kind of just built up from there. And it is I've been doing a lot of open mics lately, and it is a really great opportunity to meet new people and just like find your crowd.
What's your favorite open mic?
My favorite right now, I like the Lizard Lounge open mic. Dan Moffat hosts that one. It's a lot of fun.
So that one's back up and running?
Yeah.
How often is that?
That's once a month. I think it's like the second week of the month.
Nice.
Yeah, and then Hugh O'Neill's over in Malden has a really great open mic as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, lots of good people over there. But yeah, there's tons of good ones to check out. I just played one Quincy at the Ruth Gordon Amphitheater, which was a nice outdoor one. So that one's happening a couple more times this summer and stuff.
So that's another interesting piece of it, is I also feel like there's sort of like geographic pockets in Massachusetts of open mic communities. And so like my sort of central Mass open mic community, I can go to the open mic in Westford or in Lincoln, or a couple other places, and it's sort of this like an overlap of a lot of the same people. And I've started to kind of poke around in the Worcester music community, which is really amazing, and it's just a rich community and so much going on there. But also like these open mics that you've mentioned, I've never heard of them. I'm like, oh, I gotta go check that one out.
There's one I went to a little while back at Stone Church up in New Hampshire, that they have a great open mic. It reminded me similar to kind of the Lizard Lounge vibe. They have a really nice sound system and a really good community of people that come regularly and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. I want to get back up there at some point.
Where in New Hampshire is that?
It's right in near Portsmouth, not far from Portsmouth. It's pretty cool. It's a cool venue too. It's in an old church, so
I bet the sound is amazing.
Yeah, the sound is really good. So
nice.
Yeah, cool. Do you have any other shows or anything coming up?
Things are going to be pretty quiet for me for the next little while, which I'm actually really excited about. So not until the fall, and then I'm going on the road, and I've got some shows up in Maine and then down in Baltimore. But for now, I'm really just hyper-focused on the album release. It'll be out on streaming platforms at the end of July.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm really excited to hear some music,
Great.
So let's dive into the performance.
All right, thanks. All right, this first song is called Baltimore, and it was inspired by a conversation I had with a friend who was moving back to her hometown after deciding to make some very big changes in her life. She says that Baltimore water tastes sweetest. She should know with all the journeys she's had. Well, the taps in New York poured it spicy and dark, but the atmosphere wasn't half bad. In San Francisco, it shimmered like sunlight, and in Boston, it froze into glass with an unnerving lack of reflecting her back, with a question too loaded to ask. Who hold my hand? Who's gonna guard the door? Who's gonna know my name when I go back to Baltimore? She says that taking it slow might be smartest. She should know with all the lives that she's lived. For the souls that are hard, she'll just wear down their guard and hope they'll forget and forgive. 'Cause it's the loved ones that take it hardest. When the actors stop reading their lines, when there's a twist in the plot, whether they like it or not, all along they've been seeing the signs.
trust the current, trust the steel in her arms, and roll, roll, roll. She says tomorrow the road will be smoother. She should know with all the heartache she's borne. When that door slams at last, she'll put pay to the past and move forward, renewed and reborn. Who'll hold my hand? Who's gonna guard the door? Who's gonna know my name when I go back to Baltimore? Who's gonna know my name when I go back to Baltimore? All right, so this next song, I got the title from a friend of mine had posted on Facebook a photo of a bird at a rest stop, and she captioned it "Rest Stop Bird." And talk about inspiration, that immediately captured my imagination, and I posted on that photo "Dibs," and I stole it as the title for this song. Stop for gas again. Now he's one more tank away. Would it have changed a thing if he'd have told you stay? Crack the door and taste the night, and the feel of freedom by fluorescent light. And the road sighs out the day's last heat to the sound of a bird singing low and sweet. She'll serenade you as you're leaving town. Hear the notes rise up as the sun goes down, down, down. Sometimes leaving doesn't need a word. Listen to the song of the rest stop bird. 10 more miles on Highway 5. You need the rhythm of the road to feel alive. You left behind a heart of stone, hidden in a nest of sticks and bones. Promised you that the walls would hold, but there was nothing soft to keep out the cold. So you were both to blame when your love got beat. All those eggshells lie beneath your feet. She'll serenade you as you're leaving town. Hear the notes rise up as the sun goes down, down, down. Sometimes leaving doesn't need a word. Listen to the song of the rest stop bird. Little bird don't care that he don't care that you flew off without warning. Little bird don't care that he don't care that you'll be gone come morning. Little bird makes leaving look so easy, just a breath of wings, easier than a lot of things. serenade you as you're leaving town. Hear the notes rise up as the sun goes down, down, down. Sometimes leaving doesn't need a word. Listen to the song of the rest-stop bird. Listen to the song of the rest-stop bird. I ain't nothing but a rest-stop bird. All right, I'm going to do one more song for you. I really love to write songs that pull from my own life and that tell true tales, and those are also the songs that I like to listen to the most. But I also feel like as a songwriter, there's a constant tension between wanting to be really authentic and also knowing when it's time to hold some things back. So all of these songs that I've played are on my new album, Signposts and Marks, which is out on streaming platforms July 26th. And you can also buy a CD if you're into old-fashioned technology on my website, which is erinsullivan.com. They say I should write about the pain that I felt when you left me. They say I should write about the way that you made me so blue. They say I should carve out a song from that place in my heart where I feel so alone. But I tell them our business is best left between me and you. 'Cause it's none of their business, nobody's business but yours and mine. No one needs to know about the push and the pull and the hairs that we split all too fine. Don't want to share all those bittersweet memories of sunshine and showers. I'm not singing 'cause it's nobody's business but ours. They say it'll help heal my soul if I sing out my sorrow. Hold your wicked ways right up to the light. But how can I know if what you did today won't look quite the same way tomorrow? Sometimes what seems to be so wrong turns out to be right. And it's none of their business, nobody's business but yours and mine. No one needs to know about the push and the pull, hairs that we split all too fine. Don't want to share all those bittersweet memories of sunshine and showers. I'm not singing 'cause it's nobody's business but ours. But sometimes it's tempting to spill out our story, win pity from strangers, some songwriting glory. In the end I decide not to lay my soul bare, 'cause our story's the one thing that's left that we share. And it's none of their business, nobody's business but yours and mine. No one needs to know about the push and the pull and the hairs that we split all too fine. Don't want to share all those bittersweet memories of sunshine and showers. I'm not singing 'cause it's nobody's business but ours. I'm not singing 'cause it's nobody's business but ours.
Thanks for listening to the Songs of Inspiration podcast. Until next time, keep supporting local music, stay safe, and be well. This podcast was produced by True to the Vision Music. For more information on us, check out larswicklund.net.